Welcome to Claiming Space, a podcast about what it really means to step forward, speak up, and lead with intention. This first season is all about women in leadership, the real stories behind the roles, the challenges, the ambition, and the moments that shape how we lead. This isn't about perfect answers. It's about insight, reflection, and the courage to own your voice. So whether you're leading others, stepping into something new, or thinking about the space you want to take up, you're in the right place. Today, I'm joined by Roxanne Escobales. Roxanne is a senior communications and editorial leader, most recently as head of communications at the Power for Democracies, a role which took her to Berlin. So Roxanne, it's lovely to have you join us today.
It's great to be here.
It'll be great to hear a little bit about you,
Yeah,
your journey, what you're doing,
yeah,
and who you are.
yeah. So I've had an unconventional career path in that I sort of got thrown into media straight out of uni, just sort of by accident, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't believe that somebody was paying me to read and write and edit for a living. And I've very much that imposter syndrome of, is this real? Can I actually call myself an editor and a journalist? And then I ended up in London and I got a master's degree in journalism and went straight into news, journalism, and worked at the BBC World Service and The Guardian. And then ended up working in content and digital content and content strategy through a great organization called Girl Effect. They were a client of an agency that had commissioned me as a journalist to write about Girl Effect. And they were focused on advocating for the rights of girls and women around the world as a way to address global poverty. Very innovative organization at the time. Now, mind you, this was, 10 years ago, and it was a different climate. There was a lot of funding in place for initiatives like that. And there were the Sustainable Development Goals were in 2015, we were working up towards them to get them passed. And I was working with Zone, which is a content agency, and they used to be a boutique agency that was doing fantastic work in content. And I learned so much. I swerved out of journalism and into understanding about metrics, and I grew a love of data and really loved strategy. And that just broadened up my toolbox. I'd also spent some time at Oxfam as the head of news there in 2011. And leading the team through the East Africa famine that was happening. I don't know if you remember the visions of refugees streaming over the border from Somalia into Kenya. And so I was head of news during that time. And that was also an incredible introduction to broadening my skill set and applying my journalistic skills to a different setting. It was also my first managerial role. That was also a kind of a lesson in managing. So I'm going all over the shop because my career's gone kind of all over the shop. And I've never been one to have a sort of defined career pathway. I think there's many different ways to end up somewhere. And mine is just taken me where my nose has followed. And then I ended up at Chatham House as editor of the World Today magazine, which I'd love to talk to you more about and what we were doing there, because that was very exciting. And then ended up at Power for Democracies, which is Berlin-based. Spent a year in Berlin. I'm just freshly back, helping them build up the comms functions there in a startup environment. It's a new organization. And I think it's really a sort of a testament to what's happening with funding, international funding and development funding and democracy funding. And it's incredibly urgent mission at the moment because we're actually now living in a time when there are more autocracies in the world than there are democracies. And I don't think it takes anyone who can just look at the news and know that things are a bit topsy-turvy at the moment.
What a really interesting journey. And I think what's interesting here is that you haven't just spent your time within politics or international relations. You've spent some time understanding and talking about a lot of different complex issues. Exploring.
Yes, that's right. I think geopolitics is really complex, but I don't think it has to be always treated academically. And I think, as a journalist, bringing a storytelling understanding to how to communicate messaging is really important. But then with my strategist hat on as well, it's understanding that you have to understand your audience to be able to have the message land. Because if you're going to be speaking in a language that they're not used to, or you're talking at a place that they don't hang out in, if it's online spaces or physical locations, then you're not reaching the right people.
It's interesting because a lot of the topics that you are exploring, they're not often the mainstream topics. And you do advocate, speak and share stories for people whose voices aren't often heard. And I know that you've spent a lot of time, a lot of your career giving visibility to people whose voices are often overlooked. Do you think that's what's ultimately led you into democracy work?
Good question. I think I've always been mission aligned. I've always looked for organizations that were doing something, putting good into the world and actually stood for something. So my career start was in alternative media in the States where I'm from, and that had a really strong public journalism mission. BBC is public service broadcasting, The Guardian is trust funded, and Oxfam. Obviously, that's just something that it's been very important for me. And that's what drove me to pursue journalism, was actually to inform and to give voice to people. And that was my driving motivation. So democracy work, it was just a really exciting proposition of, hey, how do you start from scratch? I was in that point in my career where I really wanted to help build something rather than enter something that was already in motion. Or you're sort of a cog in the machine. So it's been a really interesting journey that way. So giving voice, though, to people who are marginalized or vulnerable or don't have a voice has been very important. And I did a lot of that in Chatham House.
With Chatham House as well, there must have been a transition there from reporting to helping shape members of the public to understand, to really get down to the root of what was happening there. Did you say that you were editor?
Yes, that's right. For those who don't know what Chatham House is, it's actually a think tank. Royal Institute for International Affairs is its official title. And everyone's heard of Chatham House rule. So it's been around for a long time. It has an incredible legacy and an incredible heritage behind it. It is, diplomacy and foreign policy and international affairs can be a bit elitist, not just because that's where the power lies. So using that position I had in the sort of the halls of power, if you will, how can we, and being part of a magazine, it gave me a remit to be a bit more creative in how we actually talk about international affairs and foreign policy, and was able to really task my team with ensuring that there were voices from all over the world in every issue, and that women were represented as well, because it is dominated, the international affairs community and foreign policy community is dominated by men. That's just a sad fact. I think, at the time when I was working there about 5 years ago, I think only like 25% of parliamentarians around the world were women. So it was really important for me to champion that. And I managed to switch over the distribution of male and female writers. When I started, it was 60% men contributors and 40% women contributors. And by the time I left, it was 60% women contributors and 40% men contributors. And I made sure I also increased the number of contributors from the global majority countries, so non-Western countries and non-Euro-Atlantic voices, but also marginalized communities like LGBTQ plus as well. So, and also different racial mixes. So that was also very exciting to bring that energy into Chatham House.
And at what point did you realize, or was there a realization, that communication isn't just about informing people, that it's actually about shaping outcomes?
I think impact is really important. And I think that to have, like anything, to understand if your communication has been successful is you have to understand what you were trying to achieve before you even put a piece of communication out there into the world, and having some way to measure what you're trying to achieve. So impact is always really important, or engagement. I think also communicating isn't just about broadcasting out. It's actually about listening and giving space for other people to speak or communicate. And it's a back and forth conversation, really, if you're going to be doing it successfully. It's not just listen to me, hear my ideas, or build it and they will come. It just doesn't work that way. Or people try to do it, but they're not very successful.
So less of us speaking at people rather than it being more of a dialogue.
Yeah.
So what are some of the topics, editorials that you covered in the world today?
Yeah, gosh. So we'd had a whole Africa issue. So all the contributors were African.
Okay.
It's a large continent. It
Yeah.
was a very interesting issue. And one of my favorite parts of the job was discovering talent. And I commissioned Renew Adwala, who's this Nigerian political activist who helped organize the NSARS protests back in 2020. And she was young in her early 20s and incredibly articulate. And I worked closely with her. I think there's something about when you bring people up and you include people that are from different communities and different backgrounds, is giving the space and time and attention to develop them to understand operating in your sphere, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of time with her and commissioned her a couple times. And I mean, she's a dynamo on her own steam, but really just gave her some profile, which she was also able to leverage to help her get a fellowship in Washington. And now she's just taken that and just run with it. And the thing is, though, I've been really lucky throughout my career to work with incredibly talented younger women and incredibly talented older women, really, who have helped me. And I've been able to spend the time and help develop women. I've had people who've been my line reports who've gone on to promotion. 2 or 3 just spontaneously come say, oh, I wouldn't have been able to get that role without, you being my manager, or somebody saying, oh, I had this piece of work and it was the first time she was leading on a piece of work. And she said, oh, I just asked myself, what would Roxanne do? And I find that just really inspiring because, it's just very rewarding to see people flourish and to use your power to help people do that.
Yeah.
And your privilege.
Voice and a platform.
But also empowering people with the skills.
Yes.
So I think something that I've noticed, which is lacking, is really giving that kind of constructive feedback to people. But also laying down like very clear expectations of what they're meant to do. And the standard that you want them to work at, and giving them the examples and all the tools and resources they need to actually fulfill that. That, I think, is lacking from a lot of workplaces.
Was there a leader early on in your career who shaped the way that you lead today, either through what they did well or what they got wrong?
Well, I think everyone's had those leaders that you promise you're never, if you get to that position, never do what they did.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to focus so much on those people. I think I've been also very privileged to have so many amazing women that have hired me and worked with me and shaped me. Starting from my first job at a weekly alternative paper in Tampa Bay, Florida. Susan Dix-Lyons saw me as an intern and hired me within months to be an associate editor. And she was the first one to teach me that actually spotting talent and taking the time to develop it and to give it the tools and to listen and be responsible that way was a worthwhile pursuit. So I've taken that along with me. We're still in touch. I'm also been very lucky to have great women that I'm really proud to call my friends now, because we had such close relationships in the workplace. The woman who hired me at Oxfam, Jen Corlew, she hired me and then went on mat leave. And I was like, oh, why did he leave? But before she did that, we were going through a recruitment round. And I think this is probably the first recruitment I led on. And she strongly encouraged me to phone all of the candidates who did not make it. And I was scared to do that. I was embarrassed and scared and felt really uncomfortable, but I did it. And through doing it, I realized how important it is to actually to be able to communicate what could be taken as bad news in a very human way. And I have to say that after each phone call, each candidate that was turned down actually thanked me for calling them. And she taught me that actually that was a really important part of, especially when it comes to recruitment.
That's such a great level of care.
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
very human, isn't it?
Very, yeah.
And then at Zone, Gina Rowan, she just had so much energy. And she taught me like how important jazz hands are when you're talking to people, to get them excited, and how motivating that can be, especially when you're working with clients. It's the art of the possible. She was instrumental in that. My course convener in my MA, Angela Phillips, she taught me that actually your network is your most important resource as a journalist. And I think this goes beyond journalism.
Yeah.
Especially when you find that there's, the golden teams where you just create magic together.
Yeah.
And it's just honoring those and catching up with those and, making sure you drop them a line to say, oh, I saw this and thought of you. So for instance, I worked with on Maersk. They were a client when I was working at Zone. This is a big shipping company. Worked on them for 2 years, and me and the woman I worked with very closely, who was my line report, Natalie, we ended up knowing so much about shipping containers by the end of it. It was hilarious. And I found myself in Felixstowe Harbour on a ferry. There were these big Maersk container ships that we knew all of the specs for. This was years later. Like, this was 8 years after we worked on this account together. And I just took a picture and sent it to her just to be, I'm thinking of you. And we just had such a good laugh. And then I have to mention Mom, my mother, who, when I was 8, she went back to grad school and got a master's degree in gerontology. And I just saw her work so hard to, get her master's degree while also taking care of 3 children. So that was very inspirational. And when I went and got my master's degree, I was a single mum with a 2.5-year-old. And without my mom's modeling of that, I don't think I would have ever considered it. So a lot of excellent women I've had the privilege of working with.
Yeah.
There's a lot of excellent men as well, but as this is women in leadership, I want to give the women a special nod.
Special credit.
Yeah.
I think that's really lovely to hear, how they've sort of influenced and shaped you over the years as well, and how much that's stayed with you.
Yeah, it's been really special, and these are all women I could, pick up the phone. And yeah, and then there's stuff that you have to bring in people. I think something that's really important is to admit that we all need support. So at times, before I've taken on a particular job, wait, this is a big step up for me. I don't know if I'm ready. So I got a career coach. And then started another career coach recently in a different part of my career, because I'm like, oh wait, I think I need support through this, and I need someone to help me, either hold me accountable or help give me tools that I might not have thought of, or different perspectives of approaching it, because we get so caught up in our own perspective and looking at it from our eyes. Sometimes we just keep circling issues without finding solutions. So I think that's really important, is to make sure you've got that kind of support team that you need around you.
Yeah.
That isn't necessarily at work.
Yeah. Doesn't always have to be at work.
Yeah. Or it could be like, a group of professional women that you're friends with, that are just sharing information, tips, and support. It's just so important.
Of course, of course. Thinking about leadership today, what barriers do you think that women are still facing that maybe don't get talked about enough?
Well, first of all, I want to say that workplace, since I entered, I'm in my early 50s, so 30 years ago is very different from the way it is today. And we've come in leaps and bounds, and just the fact that people are talking about the menopause in workplaces, and people are talking about the menstruation health gap and all of this, and that women are such a strong presence in the workforce now than they were 30 years ago, it's very promising. But I also see women lose their promotion and their career pathways after they have children still. And that's just a reality. Around maternity leave, women still don't make as much money as men. I don't know. There's a mix of, they say, like, women perhaps should negotiate more, or also just being lowballed. I don't know. I don't want to put the onus just on the women. I think that every workplace needs to look at the pay equity issue. I think that there's still a sort of, women get penalized for being disagreeable, or for having strong opinions. I was recently at a journalism conference that Tina Brown puts on called Truth Tellers Summit, and Kara Swisher was there. She's a big name in the tech industry, tech journalism and tech media industry in the US. And she's a really big cheese, so it's a good get to have at the conference. But she's incredibly outspoken. She's on stage with like esteemed people, and she's effing and blinding, and she's unapologetically herself. And I was just looking at her going, how did she do that? Like, how does she make it throughout her career effing and blinding as a woman? Because it's really difficult. I've been called out before for being brusque at times. This was by a male boss who also would sit in the middle of the floor on his phone shouting at his boss. And I was like, I had to tell him, that's very rich coming from you.
Yeah. It's a double standard.
So it's such a double standard at times. And that's, I think it's a societal issue that I don't like to point out problems without solutions, but that I think that's a barrier, definitely. And I would just urge all the women listening to this to, you have permission to be disagreeable. And it's okay. Also, speaking about permission is you don't have to ask. I would also urge people not to ask for permission to do certain things. I think sometimes we wait to be given permission, but I think sometimes it's better to beg for forgiveness and ask for permission. If you see something that needs to be done, just try to make it happen. And that's the best thing you could do for your career is just go for it.
Just be brave.
Yeah. Take risks.
So women are often told to be confident, but I guess confidence can be quite difficult when you're operating in environments where you're underrepresented.
Yeah.
And I know that you've had a lot of experience with that. How have you built confidence throughout your career?
I have suffered from lack of confidence at times. Absolutely. I have probably suffered from overconfidence at times, like anyone else. But the times that I've had confidence the most is when I really followed my gut. I think when you are feeling underconfident, it's perhaps a situation that just doesn't feel right for you. And I think the older I get, the more I realize, wait, if your body doesn't lie, it will tell you when you're in an unsafe place or if you're overstretching. And it's okay to overstretch, but again, it's like making sure that you're not trying to do everything on your own and be hyper independent. It's finding that support team, be it a coach or a therapist or a network of supportive women or friends or whoever that can kind of help you through that. Also, small successes. Like, what can you do in small little bits where you can see a result? And it's like making sure that we talked about impact and about successful communications. And it's really understanding what your objective is when you communicate. But I would say that applies to everything that you do. Like, what are you actually trying to achieve? And this is something I've learned from male leaders is they seem so confident and they never ask. They don't have to cushion their words. They just do it.
They don't ask for permission.
No. And I think sometimes it's just finding people that you do admire. They could be even fictional characters or historical characters or, pop stars that you just think, wow, and just ask, what would they do? And do a little fake it till you make it. Also, I found something that's really worked for me is, they don't want me to sound so woo-woo, but positive affirmations of like writing down positive statements and saying them out loud and envisioning them. Like say before you go into a meeting, I find that really just lifts the energy. And, there is science that also proves that if you can get your body energy up and regulate your system, you can go in a bit calmer and confident and more confident. So, yeah.
Would you be happy to share one of your favorite ones?
I don't have one favorite one. It depends on what I'm trying to achieve. So if I need to be like really businesslike, like before I came in here, I'm like, I'm articulate. Yeah, I'm articulate. And then like working with my coach is just coming up with phrases about yourself. I could share mine, but like I find I have the most impact when I'm passionate and I'm activating people. So I consider myself like a passionate activator. And everyone's going to be different. Everyone has a different skill set and their different motivations. And I now have a kind of skill set that is, unconventional, like my career path.
Yeah.
And that I've got the storytelling and the rigor of journalism and research and analysis, but also the creativity of storytelling and then the strategy part when it comes to like really loving data and applying learnings to improve things. So I've got all these sort of hands-on executable skills, but also the management and the strategy. But I wouldn't have had those if I'd taken a promotion.
Yeah.
I would have just been a manager.
And also, that probably wasn't the right thing for you at the time as
Mm.
well. I want to go back a little bit
Sure.
and explore a little bit more about the power of democracy. Why does this work matter right now?
Wow. I mean, we're in an interesting, period of history where we're coming out of Europe and the West, relative peace for many, many years. I think the experiment that was the European Union, it worked over here. But at the moment, we are seeing the rise of authoritarianism and autocracies. We're also seeing a dry up in funding because of what's happened with democracies, a certain large democracy across the ocean from us. It stopped their development funding, and they actually funded a lot of democracy activities around the world. I'm talking about the US. And then here in the UK, the funding landscape has shrunk with the Department for International Development getting folded into the Foreign Office. So you have a lot more organizations who need funding, but there's a lot less funding streams. So Power for Democracies was developed before all of this, developed about 2 or 3 years ago. The world has just changed so much. It's strange. So it's actually needed now more than ever to actually understand what our tactic. It's not just around finding civil society organizations that have initiatives that are addressing threats. It's also producing tools that can help funders or researchers or civil society organizations understand the tactics that can meet threats in different contexts. So it's not just about authoritarianism. At the moment, we're looking at AI and democracy and the threats and responses to that. We're at the beginning of the journey. So,
what worries you most about the way that information is consumed?
I think what worries me is it's very strange. There is so much communication.
Yeah.
Not but the number of professionalized and responsible communication sources has dried up. So I'm talking about the consolidation of media and the lack of local media and the opportunities for people to become like civically engaged, the channels of communication in the hands of billionaires like Elon Musk and others who feel that, somehow providing a responsible environment is anti-freedom of speech. And then you see the online abuse of women and online harassment of women, especially in politics. So I think the risk is that people become less engaged in serious issues and understanding. Things become so polarized. You have a different conversation if you're down the pub with, a friend or, somebody, local that had a different political view than you, and you would leave still mates and laughing.
Yeah.
But online that doesn't happen because it's just this faceless, dehumanizes everyone. So yeah, there's a lack of safety. There's especially women who are political. That deters some women from actually engaging in politics. There's not enough professionalized, responsible sources of information out there. And the ones that are, getting better of having, like, of newsrooms having more diverse representation within the newsroom, but they still have a long way to go. It's still mainly the middle classes, the white middle classes in those newsrooms deciding what the news agenda is.
And you touched a little bit about this earlier, the rise of AI.
Well,
what is the sort of crossover there of AI, communication, and leadership? What is the link there?
I don't know if I can speak on the link between AI, communications, and leadership per se, but I do know that as somebody in communications person, reading the AI-driven and produced texts and copy out there is a bit soul destroying. And I think there's a real risk of losing sort of independence of thought by relying on AI to produce our communications. And I think when it comes to leadership is actually valuing the human input. Because now some leaders are, everyone has their different, I guess, objectives and motivations, but the ones who are very profit driven are looking at how to use AI to increase productivity and lower costs. But really, it's like, how can you bring AI that is actually a complement to the workforce and the people who are your most valuable resources, because it's also about culture. Workplaces aren't just about what you produce and your outputs. It's also what sort of culture are you creating within the workplace, and you need people to have culture.
And what responsibility do leaders have when it comes to good communication?
Well, there's so many that are so bad at it. They have a big responsibility. I think the biggest responsibility is to clearly articulate the mission and objectives of the organization. Like I said, communication is a 2, 3, 4-way street. It's also to create the space where people can be heard and ideas can be exchanged safely and respectfully. Yeah.
So, what are you still working on as a leader?
Good question. I'm really inclusive and I like inclusive and collaborative workplaces, and I also like to be in charge and make my own decisions. And sometimes those don't always mix. So I've really had to learn to sort of step back a little bit and let other people make mistakes. It was one of the big learnings as a leader, of just realizing, wait a minute, no one's going to break anything. It's not open heart surgery. So I really had to learn how to just, for more juniors, it's like, you know what, you have an idea, you make that happen. And just giving people a little bit of space to do that. And then talking about the results. So I'll give you an example of when I was editing The World Today at Chatham House. My deputy was really into infographics, and I was like, they're interesting, but they're very time consuming. But I just like, make it happen. Let's do a few. And then what we did, so let him do that. We looked at how much it actually costs, and then look at it, like the engagement levels and what did they achieve. And then it kind of led him to realize, like, oh yeah, the ROI on that's not great. Like all the time I spent and all the money spent on the designer, and it's gone in a flash. Whereas before I would have been like, no, let's not do that. I'm also learning to put myself in situations that intimidate me a little bit. And this is kind of in my personal life. For instance, I'll give you an example of like 2 years ago, I learned how to sail.
Oh, wow.
And that was it's a really complex technical information you need to like layer on top of each other when it comes to tides and wind and currents and all sorts of things. And putting it all together, and I was scared, senseless when I was starting. Like, no, I don't want the tiller. No, I'll just pull on this rope. Just tell me when to pull on the rope. But I was just scared. And then slowly, I just learned. I'm not a great sailor, but I really enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
And having that kind of overwhelming intimidation, yet the thrill of learning. You only, like when you get when you're new to something, it's really intimidating. So it's like, okay, it's like not letting that put me off certain things. It's just so much fun.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a few more questions. So, what advice would you give to women who are ambitious but worry about being perceived as too much or too outspoken?
Stop worrying. I mean, just stop it. Just honestly, like if you have the ambition, don't ask for permission. You don't need permission. Don't be afraid of being disagreeable. And I don't mean disagreeable, rude, or disrespectful, but just not always having to people please. I'm actually quite lucky in that I don't have a people pleasing gene. It's just sort of not been part of my makeup, but I appreciate it in others, and I can see how it does sort of create some tensions and conflict within people, and women in particular. It's sort of what we're groomed for our whole lives, isn't it? Yeah, but don't be afraid of being disagreeable. Don't ask for permission. Take risks. But you might also, a big, incredibly valuable skill is to create good relationships with people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're being too much because you're rude or you're bullying or you don't listen to people, that's you're not good in anyone, not just women. That's just a really bad leadership style, no matter who it is that manifests that. The best leaders the best leaders I've had are the ones that are very, inclusive, respectful, but also decisive. I think some of the worst ones, we talked about some of the bad leaders, the indecision, the not be, the needing consensus all the time instead of just sometimes you have to just say no. Sometimes you have to say, this is the way it is. I've made the decision now. I've heard your point, but we're doing it because of X, Y, and Z. And, explaining the objectives and the goals and the reasoning really does help. people kind of get on board with that.
Mm.
Sometimes it's hard for leaders, and this isn't just women, but to just say, no, this is the way it's going to be, and being, decisive and directive. But I think that most people want a directional leader.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if you could sit down with your younger self at the start of your career, what advice would you give to her?
Stop worrying so much. Things will be okay. That's something I've only really just learned in the past few years. Like, actually, you have nothing to worry about. If you just approach everything, I guess this word gets overused, but authentically, and vulnerably, at times as well, you'll be absolutely fine. So often we think people are responding to us, and that we're, the center of things that happen, maybe bad or negative things that happen. Like you don't get the job, or you don't get the promotion, or you don't hear back, and it never has anything really to do with you.
Yeah.
It always has to do with what's happening internally at an organization, what they need at that time. And also, you probably dodged a bullet, because as we know, every organization has their own dysfunctionality and idiosyncrasies and pathologies. And if you didn't get that at that time, that wasn't for you.
Yeah.
So let go, don't dwell, because there's always something around the corner. There always is. I remember going for my Oxfam job for the first time, and I didn't get the job that I wanted, and I cried my eyes out. And it turns out it's because there was an internal candidate or somebody known to them, they got it. And actually, my boss had me in mind for something else, which was later on to become the head of news. So I actually got a better job. Mm-hmm. But at the time, I couldn't see that. I just saw this as a massive failure, and was horribly, distraught and disappointed. But it led to something even better.
Yeah.
And then there are times where I've got the job, even though I didn't really want a job. Like, there's this one job in particular I'm thinking about, which I won't talk about. Everyone's confidence is confidential. But I took the job, even though I thought, it could be not really for me, but I should probably take it. I should. It's when you start telling yourself you should do something. You don't always have to. It's not always actually right. So I took this job, and it was just absolutely the wrong environment for me. I did not thrive there, and the job didn't last long. And I look at that again as like, what was I doing? But the learning, there's always something to learn, right?
Yeah.
And it is around, you knew from the beginning that this wasn't the job for you, and you went there anyway.
Yeah.
And it's listening. And I think I started off saying, trust your gut.
Yeah.
Your body knows. If there's that little nagging sense of doubt about taking a position or role or promotion, listen to it, and honor it, because there's so many opportunities out there. You just have to stay open to them, but also know what direction you're headed in.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I guess it can be quite easy to just be boxed into one vision and one way of thinking.
Yeah. And people stick around too long sometimes because of safety. And I get it if you have a mortgage and you have kids and whatever. But if you're a younger woman and you don't have that, you really can take a lot more risks.
Yeah. Yeah. Then take that risk.
Yeah. Take it. Go for it. Why not?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Great opportunities.
Just go for it. Just absolutely put yourself out there.
Thank you so much, Roxanne.
Yeah,
thank you. This has been really exciting, really insightful.
Fun.
It's been really fun.
First of all, I want to say, I never get a chance to talk about these things, and thank you for putting all these podcasts out for women.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I think it's really important.
You're very welcome. I'm glad you're enjoying them. Yeah. Thank you so much to our host and guest for today's conversation, and thank you for listening to Claiming Space. We hope it's given you something to think about, or something to take away with you. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. You can also connect with us and continue the conversation on our social channels. Just search for us and follow along. Until next time, keep claiming your space.